All right, everybody. We're going to look at unemployment to start the day. So we're looking at basically this in this macroeconomic unit. We're going to be looking at some of these big picture items that you hear about all the time in the news, and we're going to kind of break apart what it actually means in a lot of cases. And today we're going to, like I said, start with unemployment. We're going to look at what I'm going to give you this video plus a short one that talks about something called participation rate and how that differs from unemployment. Just going to go through the main forms of unemployment. So first of all, frictional unemployment is the first one, right? And frictional unemployment is any time that somebody is going between one job to the next is frictional employment. It is something that that happens all the time. It's a natural part. Somebody, decides that a certain job is not for them for whatever reasons. They leave that job, then they search for another one, and then they get another job. And in between jobs is where they're counted as unemployed because they are searching for a job, right? That makes them unemployed. Okay, so this one is not a big alarming, it's not a huge something that the government's going to be really worried about. Frictional is it's a normal, I would say it's a normal activity because people want to, sometimes you move, sometimes you want to upgrade, things like that. You're not happy with your job, so it's a pretty normal thing to do. The next one is seasonal, which doesn't say here, but this is seasonal. And seasonal is also just part of the landscape of having a job, especially in a country like Canada that has defined, it should say in the sections of Canada that have a defined season, right? Like there is a definite change in season. Some countries don't have a huge variation, but we go from sunshine and beaches to, this morning it was minus 24 on the way in. I'm actually, again, Wednesday is the day I'm at school, so everything gets backed up a little bit. But in this country, since we have that definite change in season, you're going to have jobs that don't apply. So farming is a full year job, certain aspects of farming need more people. So for instance, when it's time to harvest potatoes or it's time to harvest grapes and stuff like that, that's not year round, right? That's a seasonal occupation. Tourism spikes in warm weather. Obviously right now tourism doesn't spike at all. It's down, I think I heard this morning, 80-some%, which makes sense given the pandemic. But tourism, though, is much higher during times when people are typically taking their holidays, and in Canada that would be usually spring and summer to coincide with the school year, things like that. So seasonal applies to tourism in that way. You don't need nearly as many people working in that industry during the off-season months. Retailing goes up when the holidays come around. So Boxing Day in Canada is one of the biggest, I think still is the biggest retail time for companies to make a profit. We are starting to see that American model of Black Friday that coincides with the American Thanksgiving. That's kind of seeping into Canadian consciousness, and that in the United States is when their companies, retail companies, determine whether they've made a profit for the year or not, is that particular Black Friday sale. That's where they go into the black, as they say, or they stay in the red. And if they stay in the red after that day, they're in trouble for the most part. So that's also part of it, is what time of year it is, increasing in jobs to increase the amount of people buying. And then hospitality goes along with tourism. People travel at different times of the year. And that is also going to be different in that the hospitality industry in general employs more people during the summer and the warmer months when people are outside moving around. But then there's certain hospitality that's attached to winter activities like skiing and hockey and and those kind of activities where you have a different type of hospitality industry that takes care of that. So the point is they don't last year round. So you're going to have people that are out of a job during other times of the year. Think of crab fishermen as well. There's a season for crab fishing, and the rest of the time they are not employed as a crab fisherman. So that's seasonal. The next one is cyclical. So cyclical, it just is part of the, so you have a nice, I love graphs. You have a nice graph here. So if you don't know what these things mean, right? Like what is that stuff? So long range and short range, or long run and short run. And the word here missing is aggregate. So that's what the A stands for in all these. So you have aggregate supply and aggregate demand. And in case you don't know what aggregate means, aggregate is the combined amount of supply, right? So the total is another word you could put in there. So everything together. So in the long run, supply and demand. So supply is as you can see in the long run is inelastic, because you're going to hit a wall because your resource is going to run out. And then the short run, of course, is going to be different curves. And whereas the aggregate demand can move along in different ways, just depends on what it is. But cyclical unemployment, this is just when the aggregate demand falls, right? So for whatever reason, people are demanding less from the economy in that sector, and there's going to be unemployment that goes along with that. And again, that's part of the natural cycle of business, is that some businesses go up at different times and other ones go down, and some disappear and other ones take their place. That's all part of cyclical unemployment that follows just the fluctuations in the market. Okay, so that's the idea of cyclical unemployment. The last one is the one that causes problems, and this is structural unemployment or chronic unemployment. And chronic or structural unemployment, the things that comes up here are skills, location, what do we got? Disasters. Let's see, competition with foreign firms. Those are two of the three. Four of the biggest things to do with structural unemployment. Why I say these are the worst ones is because if your labor force as a whole, so if you look at the Canadian labor force as a whole, if you're finding, if the government finds that there are gaps in skills, there's gaps in skills is the biggest one. So basically, if you don't have enough people that are, so for instance, sorry, I'm interrupting myself in train of thought here, but think of the trades right now. So we're going to run out of some trades because people are not entering that particular labor force, and that causes things like structural unemployment. So if you don't have enough electricians to do certain jobs, you need to train more, and you're going to have, or if there's an abundance of a certain amount of people, like say there's an abundance of teachers, for instance, then those people are not going to find a job because there's no job that their skills match, right? So they're going to have to retrain, they're going to have to find something else. And that's the people that can't find those jobs quickly, they become part of this structural unemployment. And if you don't address the structural problems, you come up with big issues. Location, you can't do certain jobs in certain areas. That's changing with the kind of virtual economy where you do a lot of work from home and stuff, but there are certain jobs you just can't, you're not going to find a job staying at home. So if you're from a small town, if you want to be a certain occupation, you may not be able to stay in that town. You may have to move to a bigger labor pool, bigger opportunities in a bigger city. So, if you're from, small town Ontario, you may have to move to Toronto, to Ottawa, to Kingston, something that's just bigger and has more demand for your particular skill set. That's the location issue, right? You can't stay in one spot. Disasters come and go, of course. When you have, you lose the infrastructure by a tornado going through, or there's a mudslide, or there's an avalanche, or whatever it is, and it knocks out the infrastructure for certain jobs. It has to be built back up before you can have those particular people working in that industry again. Okay, and then competition with foreign films. Wow, foreign firms. That is one that is definitely on the forefront of people's minds in terms of finding a job. That's the classic foreigners stealing our jobs kind of thing. And in some cases, it's true because there are jobs that are moved overseas or to Mexico or the United States or whatever because, the labor force there is either better equipped in terms of skills or they're cheaper, whatever it is. Our labor market is not competing well with it because of some kind of advantage they have. And a lot of the things in the global economy comes down to costs of labor. That's a big one. So the fact that you can get certain manufacturing done at a much cheaper rate in other countries, that bodes well for those countries to develop their manufacturing sector, but it doesn't do very well for our manufacturing sector, so we lose out on that. So those are the different factors in terms of structural unemployment. And again, that's the one the government really wants to deal with because those are things that are going to stick around for a lot longer, and they can cause more unemployment down the road as people who lack skills or who are losing out to foreign firms taking those particular skill sets. That needs to be addressed on a national level sometime or provincial level. Okay, so now that we've gone over those different forms of unemployment, I'm going to have, again, I'm not going to explain it because there's a short video. They'll go into it and give you an indication of what participation rate means versus unemployment rate. And the unemployment rate is very interesting in that, in case you don't know, and a lot of people do not realize, is that unemployment is equal to the number of unemployed divided by the number in the labor force. Okay, times 100. Now, before you watch the video, think about what that means exactly. What does that mean, and who are we actually counting and who are we not counting? And so then maybe you'll understand, you get a better indication anyway of what it means, why we need a different statistic called participation rate sometimes to catch up on those nuances. So I'll be back to talk about a couple other things, but right now you're going to watch that video and it's going to be a little practice thing just to do some of the statistics and see how you calculate those.